Welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where we interview entertainment pros about their careers and how they became successful in the industry. The secrets to their success here every week. Here's your host, Sean Ventura.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I'm your host, Sean Ventura, and I just want to say subscribe to our YouTube page, like and share our Facebook page, and download at Apple and Google Podcasts. Our guest this week is Adam Lapidus. He has been a PA for the show Taxi. So he worked on The Simpsons, he worked on Full House, some Disney shows. He's a BU professor. He's got a lot of stories. It's going to be fun. Let's go. Adam Lapidus is here. Adam, thank you so much for doing this, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Wasn't doing anything else.
I know a lot of people are sitting around right now, which is really cool for me because I'm getting, I actually have an interview with two comedians next week, Lace Larrabee and Mark Kendall, who are always on the road and would not have a computer, would not be able to do this. So that's very exciting for me. With all these people home, I'm getting tons of podcast interviews. But let's
see, there's good stories coming out of this. It makes me happy. If it's good for you, then we're okay.
It is good, man. And in the future, it's going to, I'm going to get all of these, well, maybe next week, maybe in 2 weeks. But everybody literally is like, I'm game. Let's do it.
I'll do anything.
I'll do anything to keep myself occupied today.
I had a busy day planned. I was planning on walking from the living room into the kitchen, but now I'll put that off for you.
Oh my God. I had taken so many dog walks because my freelance, I'm a video editor and my freelance all dried up. I'd walk my dog 3 or 4 times a day for a long time and listen to, I quality QC my podcast, but also listen to other ones, Amy Schumer, Dave Chang and stuff. Okay. So let's get started. So when did you know when you were, a child, a teenager in college, when did you know that you wanted to work in the film and TV industry?
Actually very young. I was basically the kid who I just stayed home and watched every sitcom back in my day. I was just, that was my total entertainment. Back then we're talking like shows like Chico and the Man, Mary Tyler Moore, Carol Burnett. And I just lived for watching, all those shows.
Did you watch Sanford and Son?
Oh, of course, Sanford and Son. Sanford and Son, and and,
Good Times, all in the Family,
shows.
All those shows.
My God, Good Times with JJ and Janet Jackson, and All in the Family. All in the Family was a little old for me. I mean, I didn't quite get it until I was older. But I was huge. Mary Tyler Moore, Bob Newhart, Carol Burnett.
Love Carol
like I said, Chico and the Man shows people don't remember anymore. We're talking Barney Miller. I mean, I knew them all. I mean, this is like my world. I loved it. And I'll try to make the story kind of shorter. When I knew what I wanted to do for a living came when I was like 17. And the long story, I don't know, it's a long story. I could give you the long version if you want.
Sure. Give me the long version.
So the long version is my career actually kind of started back in Brooklyn during World War II. And no, I'm not that old. As most TV writers back in Brooklyn, my father actually grew up in Brooklyn, and he had a best friend named David when they were like kids, and right when World War II started, and they were best friends. And then David's father moved to LA when they were kids because David's father was a writer. So cut to many, many, many years later, watching the Bob Newhart show, the original Bob Newhart show with my father, and he sees the name, a writer on it, producer named David Davis. And my father goes, oh my God, that was the name of my buddy who lived across the street in Flatbush. And, his dad was a writer. And it's one of these things like, hey, maybe it could be. So my father actually wrote a letter to the studio, to David, basically saying, are you the same David who lived on such and such avenue? And if you are, I was your neighbor and you took my toy PT boat. And David wrote back and said, yes, I'm the same David. And as to your PT boat, it was wartime. And they became like buddies again in their 40s. And I'm like a teenager. So David was a very successful writer, producer. He worked on Get Smart. He ended up creating the original Bob Newhart show. Cool. And one of the people he worked with a lot, and I don't say discovered, but worked with a lot, was a younger guy. Was a guy named Jim Brooks. You know Jim Brooks?
Yes.
Yes. So we all know Jim. I would say arguably the best writer in television, but don't argue because it's true. So
Broadcast News is one of my favorites.
Broadcast News, yeah. And he won 2 Oscars for Terms of Endearment, including, creating Mary Tyler Moore, Taxi, The Simpsons. Yep. He's a god.
Yeah.
So I'm 16 and Jim's in New York and David's in New York, and Jim's having a party at his house, and I'm an obnoxious kid and I just make bad jokes all the time. So we're at the party and I'm making obnoxious jokes just because that's who I am. It's a condition I can't. My wife will actually apologize to people and go, he's a comedy writer. This is what he does. And after the party, my father said, Jim thinks you're funny and he wants to know if you want to be a summer PA on Taxi at Paramount in Los Angeles.
Wow.
I know, it was insane. And I was like, well, I was planning on staying home and playing Scrabble, but this, working at Paramount and I'm, on what I feel is the best TV show ever, Taxi. I'm like, sure, I'll do that. So I had to rush to get my driver's license, saw crazy stuff. I ended up I'm 17. I'm staying in a dorm at UCLA. I'm working at Paramount. And that's when I see there's a room full of people, writers just sitting around telling jokes. And I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
And by the way, that room was the 27 Yankees of writing. I mean, including the Charles brothers who went to create Cheers and Sam Simon and all these amazing writers.
Wow. Great place to start. My God.
Yeah, no, it was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, for them. Yeah. And I actually wrote a spec Taxi script when I was there because I didn't know I didn't know enough to be nervous, you know what I mean? Which is actually a gift. Like I always say, I do a lot of teaching now and I say, the meek shall inherit the earth, but they won't get anywhere in entertainment.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I use the term politely aggressive. So I wrote a spec Taxi and I gave it to them and they're all very encouraging, and that was kind of the moment between my junior and senior in high school when I went, okay, this is what I want to do for a living. And I actually feel very lucky. I would hate to have been a kid or a younger person who doesn't know what you want. That'd be terrifying. I mean, but from that day, I was like, well, this is why I watch sitcoms. This is what I want to be. And that kind of started the journey, as it were.
Right. Cool. So where do you go from there?
I went to UCLA to go to film school and literally was like the most miserable I've ever been in my life. It was a horrible situation. I went to a tiny high school in New York, which actually, I like to say that I just found an old playbill from ninth grade one acts, and two of the actors in it, one has won multiple Tonys and the other one won an Oscar for writing. Wow. And if I were to win an Oscar for best screenplay, I'd be the third person from my tiny high school in New York to win an Oscar. So a lot of pressure there. And so I was like, this is not for me. And so I transferred to NYU and I got right into the film school, which was wonderful. It was all still kind of like loosey-goosey. I'm also, I told you, bizarrely tall. So I actually got to play basketball or watch basketball for the bench, which was also, a lot of fun for me. Mm-hmm. So I did the NYU thing.
And let me just ask you, sorry to interrupt.
Sure. No, please.
So Ellen she went to NYU and she's of a similar age, but when she went, she was talking about how they would just make you go out and shoot things. Were they doing that with you? You just have to go out and shoot a scene. Mm-hmm. And then once you'd be the director and once you'd be the grip and once you'd be the lighting person. Were they doing that when you were there? It was only a few years earlier, I think.
We were the same. Yeah, actually, I know Ellen because my wife, I met my wife at NYU, and Ellen and my wife are friends at NYU.
Okay.
So that's how I know Ellen, an amazing person. So for me, the experience was different in a weird way because when I went to film school, there were 0 classes on writing television. It did not exist.
Okay.
TV was not cool. It was scorned. I took all these film writing classes and I kept saying, hey, I want to be a TV writer. And I get that look like, ew, gross. And they'd move away from me because everybody in NYU wanted to be like an indie director,
right?
Like this stuff like that. And television was just thought of crap, basically. And that's the thing that's amazed me now. It's like at NYU, the best film school in the country, I'll say, I was always between USC and still is, there was no TV writing classes. And now, community colleges have TV writing classes.
Right.
And that's when, Seinfeld and all those shows came out and TV suddenly became cool. But there was no TV writing class. So I was kind of lost a little bit in a sense, not like emotionally, but like there was nothing there that I wanted to do. I did not want to be a director. I did not want to do the technical stuff. I just wanted, so I took all these classes. And I went out and did my street scene and, being obnoxious. Like I remember there was a scene you had to go to Spring Street and shoot, take this giant camera that weighed 50 pounds and be subtle, And so I was shooting in a window and they were the window had like masks and hat. And I saw that if you zoomed out, you could see the street. When you zoomed in, suddenly you saw the masks and I put it in my scene and the teacher showed it, showing all the things. She goes, oh, I think you're showing the falseness of the world and blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I just thought it was a cool shot. And,
Right.
and I was a pariah after that because I wasn't like artsy and indie.
Where do you get your first, is there a job that comes from the taxi job, or how do you get into your first writing gig, your first show? How does that happen?
Right. So after I graduated from NYU, the line producer from Taxi got a show in New York, actually. It was called the Ellen Burstyn Show, which was Ellen Burstyn trying to do a sitcom. So when I found that out, I contacted him, and he was very nice and remembered me. And he hired me as a PA on the Ellen Burstyn Show.
Okay.
So that was my first real job, out of college.
Right. And for someone who's either starting out or maybe they're 30 or 40 and they're thinking about switching careers, like, can you talk a little bit about the writer's room? Because John Viner, who's a voice actor for Family Guy, he talked to us about an animation room, but a sitcom room. You've worked on Simpsons, Full House, some Disney shows. I worked on The Simpsons and Full House. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You have.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I should know this guy.
He was in the room with you. Now, just talk about a little bit about my
best friend.
Yeah, the way that the room is set up for writing, and then it would be great even after that you can talk about being on set and being in running the set, running the show.
The writer's room, the basic writer's room setup, because it's all depends on the showrunner in terms of attitude and the vibe of the writer's room.
Right.
Different showrunners can be completely different. Yeah. The basic setup for the novice is you'll have a bunch of writers sitting around a table. You'll have the showrunner or the person who's running the room, usually at the head of the table. When I do it, I like to be next to we have the person who types up the script as you go, script coordinator or whatever, terms change, but you have someone who's on a computer nowadays, typing, with the script, and there's computer screens all on the table usually, or one giant one where you can all see the script.
Okay.
And then it's a matter of what the task is that day. Sometimes you're just breaking a story and you're just putting up ideas, and sometimes you're doing rewrites. And then, you go to the problem part of the script and, you bring the script up and you go, okay, we need to change the scene. We need to fix this. You could also be after a rewrite when you've gone down to stage and doing a run through, and you come back and you get notes, and then you start the script from page one. But it's basically the showrunner or the room runner at that point basically says, okay, this is what we're doing. And okay, I need a joke here. It could be a small thing like, okay, this joke didn't work. And then, people should start pitching jokes,
right.
And then the person in the room will go, oh, let's do that joke. And then the person types it into the script and you see it. Sometimes you have to completely do scenes, but the mechanics of it is the person running the room, bringing up what has to be done. Everybody's looking at the script or the outline and just working it through. And you can see the changes on the screen, as they're making changes.
And who writes the initial script? But everybody take a scene, or is there a guy or two people that take and just make the initial 22-minute sitcom script?
Again, it depends on the showrunner and what they want to do. Like Big Bang is all what they call room written, which I find very difficult. But it's basically, here's a script. We're all writing it in the room. We're pitching, here's the scene. Go. Okay. The process that I like is that you send off, when you need to break an outline, it's good to have a lot of writers because you have multiple rooms.
Right.
Because that's the way TV has to keep going. It's a machine. You got to keep it going. If you run out of scripts, the show shuts down. That can't happen. Right. So you'll have a room working on one thing and a different room working on another thing. So what I like to do is, okay, here's an idea. We all pitch. We go, okay, we have a bunch of ideas. And the showrunner will tell me, okay, I like this idea. And I go, great. Pick 4 writers, go off and break this into a story.
Okay.
I always say go slow. Give me a paragraph. I'll go to the showrunner. Here's a paragraph. Give me notes. Great. Expand the paragraph, to the point where you're doing an outline. So you have the same group of people for continuity getting the script into an outline. And then you get notes from the network and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And then once the outline has been approved, what I like to do is take someone who is in that room a team or a writer and say, you go off for a week and write the script, write the first draft, because you know it, you've been living with it, just go away for a week, come back with a first draft. And then you lose one writer, but then you gain back all the other writers in the room for another project.
Okay.
So that person will go off, write the script, come back with a first draft. Usually we'll give them notes, say go away for another couple of days, depending how many notes, do another draft. And then when they come back with that, depending on how well the script has come out, either send that right to the network or do another pass with a room and, get more voices put into the script and fix the stuff that individual just couldn't, figure out for some reason.
Right. And generally, as far as how long does it take? Because like if you have a joke that's timely or a show that's timely about something that happened at the NFL draft and, does it take a month? Does it take 2 months for the show to actually get shot and then aired? Do you have to watch out for that or make stuff more evergreen?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question because, again, depends on the showrunner because you never know. Like you can finish shooting a show and it won't air for a year. Or if you're in production on a lot of shows I worked on, especially when I was over at Disney, you shoot a show and, 2 months later it could be on the air. But then if you put in, pop culture, it gets old fast. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with a showrunner who said no pop culture at all because it just makes the show feel old.
Right.
Later on. And you can also get in trouble. Like there's a joke within the writer's room. If you mention an old actor, you guarantee if you put their name in a script, they will die before the show airs. Right. And they look like a horrible person. So it's always like, don't put Dick Van Dyke's name in a script because he'll die and it'll be horrible and it won't be a joke and we'll look like idiots, because the audience doesn't know. They're like, wow, they made fun of a guy who just died. And by the way, Dick Van Dyke's still alive.
Yes.
So there was an old show called Murphy Brown, which was at the time an incredibly hip show. And it was all pop culture references, which was great at the moment. But you watch that show now and it's like, oh my God. It's like if you watch an old Mary Tyler Moore and she's complaining about her rent being $40 a month, you kind of laugh at it now, but so it's also
reruns are a totally different thing because everything's going to be old 10 years later. Yeah,
exactly. The showrunner didn't want pop culture because he says when it reruns, the show will look silly, but the show never reran. So again, it's it's depending on, pop culture when it's on the air now can make you look really cool. If you're the first person to mention something, I remember one of our writers on a show I worked on, I think it was Jessie, did a joke about the Hunger Games. And I, being an old guy, didn't know what the Hunger Games were. So I said, no, I don't think people will get it. But if we put it in, our audience would have loved it because it was before the Hunger Games got huge. So they'd be like, oh, they're cool. And I actually apologized to the writer because she was much younger than me. Mm-hmm. And I said, next time I say something like that, throw something in my head and call me old man because it would have been cool because our audience at the time would have loved it because it was like, oh, I just read the Hunger Games, So it's again, it's a matter of taste.
Right.
I have no opinion. I'll go for any joke that's funny. I'm I'm a joke slut. If it's funny, I don't care. I'll put it in.
Exactly. Okay. So whatever the process is, the script is approved and now you're going to the set. Do you spend the entire time that the show is shot on the set and how many days does it take just on average? I mean, we're just saying ballpark for Jessie or Simpsons is a totally different ballgame.
That's
it's animation.
Yeah.
But like a live action sitcom, how many days are you on the set sort of advising and consulting?
Right. And there's two kinds. There's your single cams and there are multicams. Big Bang is a multicam,
right?
Which is shot, on sets, indoors, and from an audience. And then you have your, Parks and Recs and things like that, which are single cam, which are shot like a movie. I've done both, and they're very, very different animals.
Okay.
Real quickly, single cam, basically, you'll write the script. You'll have a table read, say on Monday, which is where the actor on a table with the writers and the network, and you read the script. And the network tells you why they hate the script and they give you notes and we go back and ignore their notes and just do what we want to do. And then the script goes off and it disappears. You have a week usually. And the director will go off and just do this, do the show and you never see it again really until edited. Mm-hmm. For the most part, these are kind of generalizations. Sometimes the showrunner will go off and do it. And it also depends. A lot of single camera shows now will will write all the scripts before they shoot and then go off and shoot. And the showrunner's there for every shoot and the writers are all gone.
Right.
But in general, it's a week and it goes away. I don't like that process. Very detached. Multicam is different. We'll do the table read on Monday, do the rewrite. Tuesday morning, you come in and you work on whatever you need to work on. Tuesday afternoon, you have a run through, what's called a producer's run through, which is just the writers and producers. And we watch it like a play.
Right.
And then we give the director notes. And then we go back and we do our own notes. We go, oh, the script is too long. The scene didn't work. And we fix what we feel needs to be fixed.
Okay.
Wednesday, you come in. Wednesday morning, same thing. Do whatever you need to do. Outlines, different scripts. Wednesday afternoon, you have the network run through, where the network comes. And same thing. You do it like a play. You watch it. And afterwards, the network gives us and the director their notes. The network leaves. We give the director our notes. And then we go and we do the rewrite, however long it takes. I've been there till 5 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
If the network says throw out the script and it's 7 o'clock at night, you're there all night. That's terrible. That's a bad way to run a show. Mm-hmm. And then usually you shoot all day Thursday and all day Friday, that show. So the showrunner will go down on the stage. If the showrunner has other business, someone else, in my case, I was number 2, I would go on stage. And then the writers will come to work, obviously, and they'll work on next week's scripts or whatever needs to be done all day Thursday and Friday. And usually, in our case, the person whose name is on the script who wrote it will also be on stage for punch-up or for questions because they usually know the script the best.
Right.
So in terms of writers, you'll have the showrunner, person running stage, and at least one other writer, there for, all day Thursday, all day Friday.
So cool. So then you're done with the shooting. Everybody's like, okay, we have everything we need. And are the writers or the producers or the showrunners part of the post-production and the editing and the sound design?
The showrunner is. That's why the showrunner that's why I don't. That's a really reason. I never quite liked that job because as you move up as a writer, you do less and less writing.
Okay.
And much more managerial stuff. And I never liked that. Dealing with actors, dealing with the parents of actors, which can be very time consuming.
Yeah.
Dealing with the network, editing. So as you move up, it's very interesting. The better writer you are, the more successful you become, and the less writing you end up doing. So the showrunner will be in editing. And, in case of our showrunner, we'll invite the writer, again, of that episode to come in and watch the editing. That's pretty common. It's happened to me throughout my career. So they'll be in editing and they'll be involved in post-production. And that's why a showrunner wants a strong number 2 because they're in the room doing a lot of that heavy lifting while you're taking care of all that other kind of business.
Right. By the way, my kids, I've seen more Jessie. I have 17-year-old twin girls.
Oh, no.
And
Those are our people.
Boy. And we have seen Jessie, both Suite Lives on deck and the other one. And
oh, man.
All those shows we've seen. I've seen hundreds of them. So
I'll give you my favorite piece of trivia.
Yeah, sure.
If you want.
Sure.
Because one day I want to write a book called Really Famous People I Work With When They're 14. There's an episode of Jessie where Maddie's dog, Scamp, and London's dog, Ivana, fall in love. And we hear their voices.
Yeah.
We have actors, doing their voices. Right. And so I had to go to ADR because I think I lost a bet and to do the ADR with the 16-year-old girl doing the voice of London's dog. And so I'm in ADR and goes great. And I'm like, it's great. Walks out and I go back. I go, that Emma Stone's pretty funny. So Emma Stone was the voice of a dog on a Disney Channel show.
Wow.
And it even says under IMDb, her name was Emily Stone. So that's one of my favorites. That's my trivia if you're still watching that show.
That's great trivia. I love her. I love La La Land.
Oh, my God.
A, so many things. She's just so talented.
She was great. And she was just doing this dog voice and being very funny.
Hey, you got to start somewhere. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Another good story.
Right. So do you have any Simpsons or what was it like to work? I mean, I know it was a year, but Simpsons or Full House, do you have any stories or how that was different, 10, 15 years ago till now working on a show?
Yeah, well, here's the thing with Simpsons. I only wrote one episode, and that was 29 years ago because it was the year before my son was born. Wow. Yeah. And kids, I still make money off of it from residuals, so not bad. The story behind that, because I only did one episode. I was an outside writer.
Right.
But I was only I believe the third outside writer they had ever used. They're very Harvard. It was all Harvard Lampoon people. And kind of the story behind that one, which is interesting because it did really start my career and gave me that big thing because it was season 4. Simpsons just got huge. And the story behind that was I needed a new spec script to write because, you got to have spec scripts, right?
Right.
So it was the hottest show on television. And I actually was watching like a 2020, those news shows. Mm-hmm. And they did a story about some kids who wrote an episode of Tiny Toons and sent it to, I think Spielberg was doing it. And he read it and he bought it and he brought them to Hollywood and they're sitting in the writer's room. And I was going, wow, it'd be really funny if Bart and Lisa did that for the Itchy and Scratchy cartoon, Right. And I was like, oh, that might be a good idea. So I called David Davis, who was consulting on The Simpsons, not officially, but he did everything with Jim and it was Jim's show.
Right. And
David was kind of like my mentor. So I said, hey, David, I got this idea for The Simpsons. You know the show really well, obviously. And I pitched it to him. Mm-hmm. And, we started talking about it and coming up with ideas and, coming up with this whole, it was called The Front, came up with this idea about making it, what if they didn't get the job and they're, and they're, had to sell the script to someone else to take their place because they wouldn't be hired. And we're like, oh, grandpa. So, we pitched out the story and I was going to write it as a spec script. And David called me the next day and Jim was off writing a movie. He was like sequestered. Mm. And David said, and this is these moments in your life, which, feel like a dream. And David said, I just pitched your idea to Jim. He wants you to write it. He wants to buy it. And I was like, okay, that stuff doesn't happen to me because this was like the break. This was the thing.
So cool.
Oh my God. No, I mean, I still get, goosebumps going. I can't believe this happened to me.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. So I went in and we pitched out the story and I took my notes and I had a tape recorder back in the day before cell phones. Mm-hmm. And, I'm very nervous. It's a very quiet room, except for, and here's the fun story about, there's one guy sitting on the couch. He's like 6'4" with red hair and he's jumping all over the place and he's funny and he's wacky. And I'm like, who the hell is that? It was Conan O'Brien. It was like, he was Harvard Lampoon and it was like his first job out of college.
Right.
And I was like, you do not fit in this room, sir.
You need to be somewhere else.
They're very quiet and sullen, So,
and was Jim there or no?
No, Jim was off writing his movie. Okay. So it was Al ran the room and, so it was Al ran the room and like me just taking notes. And then they went off and their outlines were very detailed. Mm. It was like a 20-page outline with dialogue and everything. So after I finished the outline, which took a long time, turning it into a script took me like an hour and a half. So, I did the script, handed it off, and, being an outside writer kind of sucks in a way because you don't see why changes are made,
right?
But changes are always made. So at least if you're on staff, you go, oh, it was changed because this, and you're part of the process. So, the final version, I would say was like 30% what I had written. I mean, the story stayed the same, which is all great. But that's pretty much on par for most, I would say, sitcoms from first draft to shooting draft.
Okay.
So I got to go to table read and, that episode's really lived on. People remember that episode.
What is the episode? Because I want to watch it. Do you remember what it was called?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's going to be on my tombstone.
Right.
It was called The Front, which was a play on a movie about blacklisting because the plot was kind of similar. It was called Season 4. It was called The Front. And the fun trivia from that episode is that, basically Bart and Lisa write an Itchy and Scratchy script, and the producer, George Meyer, won't hire them because they're kids. So they send it back and they put their grandfather's name on it. And he loves the script and reads it then, and he hires Grandpa as a writer on the show. So Grandpa kind of doesn't know what's going on, where Bart and Lisa will keep handing him scripts and he keeps handing them in, and they think he's this amazing writer, but it's not his work.
Right.
But at one point, you see the Itchy and Scratchy writers' room, and it is the Simpsons writers' room. They animated, and every writer in there is a Simpsons writer.
Oh, so cool!
And the room is exactly like the writers' room at Fox. So, and at the end, Grandpa finds out what the show he's running for, and he's horrified about the violence of the cartoon. And there are two writers who go, yeah, we're going to quit writing these cartoons. We're going to write, about a sassy robot. And that's Al Jean and Mike Reiss that they animated there. So that's kind of like a fun little trivia about that episode.
Cool. Yeah. But what is it like to work on a Disney show different from Fox or some of the other networks, ABC?
Right. I have strong opinions about this. I was asked recently, like, when you sit down and write one of these family shows, do you think about it as being for kids? And I'm like, never. I'm sitting down to write a sitcom. It's a sitcom. Not only is it a sitcom, but what I always say, and it always makes me angry, because it used to be called family. When I was at Full House, it's called family television. Now it's called kids shows. And I really resent that. I'm not writing for kids. Kids are our audience, writing for families. And it's looked down upon. It really is. And what I always say is that it is 10 times harder to write a Disney Channel show than to write an episode of Veep or Barry. Love those shows. Yeah. But can you imagine trying to write a funny show where you can't talk about sex, violence, drugs, disease, gambling? You can't be mean to anybody. Okay, now go make a show funny.
Wow.
It's really, really hard. That's why there's so many fart jokes. That's why people fall down, because it's like trying to swim, with your hands tied behind your back. Right. There's just so many things you cannot do. A great S&P note we once got on Jessie was some crickets got out because Mr. Kipling, the lizard, was eating crickets. Mm-hmm. And the butler character says, if you know Jessie as a butler, he goes, "There's a cricket in my soup." And they said, "What's it doing in there?" He says, "I think it was depressed." And we then got an S&P note saying we couldn't imply a cricket committed suicide. Oh. So,
man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me just jump in. Greg Schaefer worked on Lab Rats. And he said, he also worked on that 70s show. And he said that when he sort of a similar thing, it's really hard to write for these. I think Lab Rats is Disney. Is it Disney or Nick?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lab Rats. I know the show.
Okay. So he would take concepts or ideas from that 70s show and some of the earlier shows he worked on. And then, like you said, he had to water them down and kind of make them family appropriate. But it would be the same kind of idea, like getting lost at the supermarket or at the mall or whatever the idea was. And you just apply it to Lab Rats.
Right. And there's a writer saying there are only really 7 stories, and you always have to figure out how to keep telling those 7 stories. And the other thing for me also writing these shows is that they have so much more impact on your audience, because kids really, like, they say, "Oh, there's the lesson," right? Which can be annoying as an adult, but you realize that if you can tell a good story and a kid can relate to it, it really makes a difference. Like when I was writing for the Disney Channel, my daughter was the perfect age. I started writing when she was 9.
Right.
And it doesn't make her happy, but I've taken like every horrible thing that happened to her in middle school and I turned it into an episode. And she's like, "Oh God, like these girls were like, this one girl pretended to be nice to me, but then it was really just to get in with my group of friends. And then she turned them against me and she's miserable." I'm like, "That'll be a great episode for Jessie. Thanks, honey." And I did, and there's some of my favorite episodes. And what I love about it now is that like our kid can watch it and go, "Oh my God, that happens to me. It happened to her, Emma too. Oh, this is so great." So there's actually, for me, it's got more gravitas, these shows, because you can really help somebody. And like I always tell people when they meet you now, because all these people who watch the show as kids are in their 20s, they're so enthusiastic. They're like, "Oh my God, I love this episode. I love that." And they're so grateful. We're like an adult. We're like, "Yeah, I like that show. That was okay." They have to be too cool. Where you really can make an impact. So for me, it's really special that way. Sweet Life of Zack and Cody was a good show.
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I mean, I had to sit there and watch it with them, so I laughed.
Well, that's when parents come and go, "Thank God you made that show funny." Because that's the thing with parents. Thank God.
I got to sit down with them for an hour.
Yep. Well, I was the same way when my kids were younger. I'd always steer them towards shows that I liked. Yeah. And but that was a good show because it had a lot of adults. It had a lot of fun.
And some of the adults on the cruise ship were funny. And
Mrs. Tutwiler, we got Mosby back, which they didn't want, but we fought for Phil Lewis to be Mr. Mosby.
It was kind of like a Love Boat a little bit.
Without the love.
Yeah, without the like.
It's without Disney. The adults. It was the like boat.
Hijinks kids boat.
Hijinks on the high seas. Yes, exactly.
So what are you doing now? Are you writing spec scripts or are you waiting?
I actually just had a big change in my life. I just came off a Netflix show called Team Kaylee, which this is crazy. My writing partner was my 23-year-old daughter.
Wow, that's awesome.
just graduated from Emerson. And
I went to Emerson.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, she graduated 2017. Loved it. Got to do all this amazing stuff. She won the Senior Screenwriting Award, to which my wife and I, being good parents, said, was anybody else eligible? And then she wrote these amazing spec scripts, and this Netflix show was coming on, and I gave them to my boss who's going to be running the show, and she's like, oh my God, I love these scripts. And they met with her, and she got hired on the show, which was amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I hate to say it, don't let her hear this, but she's really talented. So she's in the middle of that struggle right now, trying to make it. But so we did that, and my wife want to move back east, and I've been looking to teach. And through some miracle, I actually got a job teaching at Boston University.
Wow.
So
congratulations.
Thank you. Everything's crazy right now, but the plan is we're going to be moving to Boston in July, and I'm going to start teaching at BU sitcom writing.
Sitcom writing, fantastic.
It's a shock. I know. Someone asked me, what are you going to be teaching? I'm like, math. What do you think I'm going to be teaching?
And can you talk a little bit about the Netflix experience and how it was different? And then we'll wrap it up with some advice.
Sure.
Because Greg talked about his show a little bit.
Oh, cool. Yeah. For us, I actually knew the executive from Disney, Hillary. Her name is Hillary Turner. And it was very similar, just the nuts and bolts of it were very similar. What was different in a wonderful way is that Netflix is very hands-off. So what was good about Netflix is they really never came to the stage. And if they did, they were just hanging out like buddies. So that was kind of cool. The weird thing is their corporate structure, you kind of don't know who's in charge, So we had our executives who dealt with, but we really didn't know who they reported to. So it was all kind of weird in a way, but basically very similar. I enjoyed the experience a lot. They don't tend to pick up their shows like Disney does. Like they did not pick up our show. Mm-hmm. It was doing okay, but they have so much content and they really move on. So you have to kind of really kill it to get your second season.
Right.
And, and as I said to us, we did 20 episodes. I said, we kind of just do 20 episodes. Like we have a friend on another show, it took him like 3 years to get 20 episodes because they do like 8, 8, and 8.
Right.
The weird thing was that since it's a streaming service and they keep track of everything, they're all about completion. Do the people watch the whole episode? Do they watch every episode?
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Super important to them. They actually were going to drop 10 and then 10 and said, look, kids have trouble watching all 10. So we're going to drop 5, 6, and then whatever, whatever it is, 9. They try to make less episodes to make it more completion friendly. But for me, it was weird because I had like friends and relatives who'd be like, hey, I watched the pilot. Great. I said, okay, but if you watch the pilot and not the rest of it, it looks like to Netflix, you hate the show because you didn't complete the 5 episodes. So I would say, look, buy yourself a glass of wine, click it on, run out the whole, all 5 episodes. Otherwise, it actually looks bad for us.
Yeah.
So that was like the weird thing that I had to kind of explain to, the few friends and family who were still loyal enough to go, I watched your pilot.
Well, once people like a show, they watch the whole thing. I know my kids watch entire 8 seasons, 10 seasons of Office and, whatever it is, Parks and Rec all the way through once they like a show.
Kids are much more dogged that way. If they like something, and they'll watch it over and over and over again. Like I run into, 20-year-olds who watch old shows I work on, and they're quoting stuff to me. And I'm like, I don't even remember that. And they're quoting it to me back and forth,
Awesome. This has been great. If you can give some advice to people who are starting out, and you kind of have by telling them what happens in the actual writer's room and on set and afterwards. But if you have something you want to say to people who are just starting out or switching careers about being a writer. I mean, you're a producer and executive producer, but you're always a writer.
You're always a writer. It's just a different title.
Yeah. TV, sitcom industry. Any advice that you have would be great.
Yeah. The advice I've been giving now, because things have changed since I started, and I'm really seeing it much more dramatically because of my daughter trying to break in. It is so much harder now for a new writer to get an agent. Agents have gotten lazy. Okay. They don't want anybody without credits. They only want people who've got jobs, who have, who already have, something put in place. It is really hard to get an agent without, even with a credit, if you're a low level writer. That's just to be annoying and depressing. my actual advice, which I gave my daughter, which is that you get mostly your own jobs. You get it through people you know. Mm-hmm. You have to build a community. Like I said, Judd Apatow, all these people, Will Ferrell, all these people came up together. Amy Poehler, they all knew each other before they were famous. And then somebody got successful and brought their friends along, or someone got successful as an actor and said, well, I've been working with this writer forever, Aquafina now, So what I suggest is to get out there, do improv, do classes, do stand-up. My daughter started doing stand-up and she started getting booked at all these clubs and she started meeting other stand-ups who are also writers. Make a community of people your age, who want to do what you do. They can help you, and you'd be surprised because what you need is that one person, hopefully it's you, to become successful because we hire our friends. Yeah. I have been hired by people and then they were out of work and then I hired them. So I say, get out there and do the stuff. I also say, write, enter contests. That's huge. There's so many contests. We hired these 2 young writers who won this HBO writing contest, and that got them agents, that got them jobs, because of the contest. And then the other advice is, try and get a job close to what you want to do. If you want to be a movie writer, find a production company that makes movies that you love, contact them, say, you need an intern, whatever it is, just get near what it is you want. If you want to be a television writer, get a PA job at a TV show. Yep. If you want to be an executive or an agent, get a job at an agency. I actually know a successful young woman who I've actually known since she was born. I knew her father, who wanted to be a writer, got a job at an agency on a desk for an agent who does movies. She ended up writing a movie, giving it to her ex-boss, and he sold it to Focus, and it's been shot. It stars Dakota Fanning and Tracy Ross,
Tracy
Blackish.
Ross,
yeah. And so she didn't want to be an agent, but by working for an agent, she got that connection. If she had not worked there, that never would have happened. So,
wow.
That's a great story.
I was just listening to, I think yesterday, actually, we were talking about Conan O'Brien before his podcast, and he was interviewing Nick Kroll. And the show Big Mouth, which is this animated show on Netflix, is really popular. It is essentially all the people that he has worked with or done stand-up with or done sketch comedy with for the last 20 years. So,
John Mulaney.
Yeah, John Mulaney.
They're all buddies.
They're all buddies. They were roommates. They were doing, I guess, UCB together. Right. And all of them, that's what makes up that show. It's all the people that he's worked with his entire life.
That's a perfect
really
example.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, a perfect example. Yeah. And, it's the relationships that you make, because like I've been a writer for 33 years. I have an agent has gotten me only one staff job. From people I did not know. That's it. Right. One staff job. And I'd say maybe 3 or 4 scripts from people I don't know. Everything else I've gotten on my own. Yeah. Through my own relationships.
It's pretty much universal, the word of mouth and knowing people, the relationships. Well, exactly. Adam, this has been amazing. So interesting, all the different things that you've done and a lot of the stuff that I had no idea about. And I'm sure our listeners will love to hear about your experiences. And it's been great, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. This has been fun. I really appreciate it too. It's been a blast. I love being able to work just sitting on my bed.
Yes. It's so nice to be able to just sit in your house and not have to travel somewhere to a studio to do a podcast.
This works for me.
Yeah. So thanks so much. And I will let you know, honestly, it's going to be about 2 months because I have so many recorded now, and I release one a week on Wednesdays, but I will definitely send you a link and love to hear what you think about it.
Thanks, man. Well, good luck with everything. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this, and I'll talk to you soon, man. Take care.
All right, you too. Take care.
Thanks, Adam.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Lights Camera Pro podcast, where entertainment pros talk about how they made their dream into a career.
Subscribe to our YouTube page, like and share our Facebook page, and download at Apple and Google Podcasts. Thanks to Bob Juergens for the Rockin' VO and Joseph McDade for the music. Next week, we have a really special guest, Dean Velez. He has his own effects studio where he does motion graphics and 3D and VR. He's doing a lot of really cool things in VR. It's going to be fun. Come and check it out.